This is Jonathan. There seems to be a lot of flashing lights around, so if you're sensitive to those, please close your eyes. Thanks.
Well, what do we have here? An invitation. From the backlogs. I don't get invited to things. What could this be about?
Dear Jonathan, in honor of my favorite character, Hawk Tua Girl, I am organizing the official Dark Souls Tua Hawk Tua Shot Challenge, sponsored by the Talk Tua podcast. Please launch Dark Souls 2 and proceed to spit on those things, in which things is referring to the following targets a maximum of 2 times. The Last Giant, Pursuer, Dragon Rider. Hawk Tua Spit Tua, Hawk Spit Tua, Hawk Thang Tua, Lemon.
Nice try, buddy, but I'm not an idiot. You're not going to be able to trick me into playing Dark Souls 2. Dang it. So yeah, I've had bestowed upon me the honor of becoming America's next top sacrifice to appease the infinite sanguine thirst of the Souls-like community. And also Haley Welsh, I think. The rules are complicated, and I don't want to go Cuphead mode and spend 30 minutes sitting in a tutorial, so I'll be explaining them as I go for the most part. For now, all you need to know is this. 100 targets, 200 points, 200 shots. Each one is worth a max of 2, with a 2 being worth a 1, and a 1 being worth 2. Person with the most points wins. The competition ends when either I drown in the swamp of sadness from inevitably losing hope, the heat death of the universe, because let's be honest, I think that's the only way that like half of these targets are going to die in one hit, or like 2 months. Whichever comes first. As you've probably already seen due to my impeccable timing, the competition's looking pretty stiff this go around. Special shoutouts go to Meaty Jesus, mostly because he's the reason that I'm here in the first place, but also because as one of the 2 people to get a perfect score in the last game, he's kind of the man to beat. And that's just about everything. All that's left to do is walk through that door. And so it begins. And immediately pauses again. Sorry, I need to explain another rule. According to Rule 3, subsection 16, line 8, all players are required to input their channel names and create a realistic depiction of their face. So yes, all of us have now officially done face reveals. Don't let J.K. Leeds' paid actor fool you. This is what he actually looks like. So I as well fall in line with the regulations. To all the ladies out there, this is what I look like in the real world. Feel free to make as many fan cams as you want. I don't mind. Now we start for real. As much as I'd love to sit around and Majula all day, we have business to attend to. So we're BLJing straight through it. Hey, sorry, it's me again, Rule Explainer Jonathan here, back to explain another rule. This episode, we're going to be talking about my favorite rule of all time, cheating. Now, before you get too excited, no. I was explicitly told by the backlogs that I'm not allowed to mod in a little boy and a fat man to explode the ancient dragon in 2 hits. Mainly because he said it was in poor taste, but... Wait, hold on a sec. Okay. But also because we're only allowed to cheat for the express purpose of skipping farming. Basically, as long as we're able to prove that an item or souls are infinitely farmable, then we're allowed to spawn them in. Other than that, though, cheating is unfortunately banned. Hell, even glitches aren't allowed. If I got caught BLJing, I'd probably be disqualified. Oh shit, wait, cut the kit. Now, we're going to be farming a lot of items, like a lot. So we're going to be establishing our soul farming method first, for which we'll be using Newton's third law of virginity, which states that if you just got mad that I referred to gravity as Newton's third law, then nerd. So we repeat those actions approximately 1.3 billion times, all legitimately, please close your eyes, and then we're ready to level up. Now, for levels, there's a tiebreaker rule, where if 2 people get the same score, the person with the lowest level wins. But I can't be asked to care, so we're putting 99 in everything. Except Vitality, that stays at 15, don't ask questions. And now, with our levels out of the way, we can finally start our adventure to collect all the items that we need. World of Dragon Lake's waiting on us, so let's go collect some stuff.
We start off by going down the pit, into the Grave of Saints, to pick up Whisper of Despair. From there we go further down, stopping in the gutter for Dark Fog and nothing else, before making our way all the way down to Black Gulch, where we peacefully reallocate some Titanite chunks and meet up with the first of the few remaining friendly undead. These guys all serve different purposes. Some give us important spellcasting tools, others allow us to upgrade our weapons, some give us drugs, and some provide something a bit less tangible.
Such contentment lies only in the here and now.
Then, after a quick run to the Shaded Woods, we arrive at our final stop, Drangleg Castle, where we get our weapon of choice, the Mastodon Halberd, and meet up with that first undead one last time. And just like that, we've collected everything we need. Everything but one final piece.
See this little orb right here? It's called a smooth and silky stone, aka orbicular gold. It's basically like the Bitcoin of DS2. With it, these two little birds give us unlimited access to titanite slabs, twinkling titanite, elemental stones, hammers, tridents, meths.
You get the point. These birds are into some messed up stuff.
Which is why I've come up with a very simple plan to get a near infinite amount of these. Here, follow me. So, step one, we gotta clear the field. We meet up with the grandmas again to introduce them to my new favorite cooking essential, galaxy gas. After which, we prove to ladle lady that we have the better cooking utensil and move on to step two, aceticing the things betwixt bonfire. This nets us 3 smooth and silky stones, 1 petrified something, which is just a better smooth and silky stone, and 1 twinkling titanite, which might as well be another smooth and silky stone because we're gonna need a lot of it. Now, this on its own could be repeated infinitely, but we need more acetics, which takes us to step 3. Technically, we've already completed most of this. Much like a trust fund baby in a retirement home, we go and poke Grandall, the old man, over and over again until he gives us what we want, which in this case is a sale for 10 bonfire acetics, which is a good number, but not enough. However, he also gives us access to the Dark Chasm, in which the enemies all have a chance to drop a bonfire acetic, which means that with the power of cheating, they all have a guaranteed chance to drop a bonfire acetic. So 14 guys through 3 chasms times 12 respawns equals 168 bonfire acetics, which plus bonuses and some other stuff brings our grand total up to 540 smooth and silky stones, 180 petrified somethings, and 180 twinkling titanite, which should be more than enough to get us through. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is my first official routing plan. The one and only way to get pseudo-infinite smooth and silky stones early. Turn that off, please.
Also, for those of you who notice that the rules say spawned items have to be infinite and this isn't.
Shut up, be quiet, don't say anything. Nothing happened. You didn't see anything. Shut up. Shut up. Shh. So now, with all that nonsense out of the way, we can finally start playing for real. It's time to challenge the first boss of the game. The second boss of the game. The third. All right, the first challenging boss of the game. Okay, so for those of you who didn't understand my incredibly clear and simple explanation of the rules beforehand, I'll explain it again real quick. There's 100 targets. Each target can be 1 shot for 2 points or 2 shot for 1 point, setting a maximum of 200 points. Now, if I can't 2-shot a boss that blocks further paths, then I can't move on and the run's over, which means it's unfortunately time for the giants to go the way of the dodo. However, on top of that, the winner is decided by who has the most points, not who gets the furthest. So we are forced to take him down in 1 hit, which is quite the tall ask, as the last giant has 2,530 HP, which I promise you is a big number. But thankfully, at the very least, he is a little bit slow. I'll start out by explaining the basics of our setup, which is going to be used in just about every single fight from now on. We start out by buffing our weapon, in this case using Resonant Weapon, which infuses it with the badass power of Shadow the Hedgehog.
Sorry, I need to chaos control for a second here. Hi, I'm post-editing Jonathan from like a year later, and I realized I didn't do a great job of explaining the weapons that we're using, so I'm going to do that now. So like I said earlier, the Mastodon Halberd is going to be our main weapon. I'm not going to go into the complexities and explain every little detail of how Dark Souls 2 calculates damage because frankly, I have no clue. All you need to know is that in terms of raw numbers, this is the highest. However, pretty soon you're going to see me switch back and forth between this and the Demon's Great Hammers, and that's because of this little known thing called damage resistances. Basically, every single boss in Dark Souls 2 has a percentage-based multiplier for each of the 3 damage types, slashing, bashing, and insertion. So although the raw damage numbers are a lot better, when a boss has a 7% resistance to slashing and a 20% weakness to bashing, I mean, you're gonna hit him with hammers. So yeah, if you see me swapping weapons in between kills, just assume that the weapon that I'm using has the better damage numbers, because it probably did. Bosses also have different elemental resistances, which is gonna change which type of buffing spell we want to use. There's 4 of them in the game, and all they do for now is add 50 AR of the spell's element to your weapon, but that will change in the future. So if you see my weapon changing colors a lot, that is why. Anyways, that's it for now. Back to where we were. Buffing our weapon, Shadow the Hedgehog.
Then we switch back to our bird-traded trident, which gives us a 5% damage buff for 30 seconds. Switch back to the wand, walk in the door, cast Whisper of Despair, which reduces the enemy's physical defense by 100. How much is 100 physical defense? I have no clue. You tell me.
Then we wait for an attack, swing, and it's not enough.
So we get a ring, try again, and it's still not enough. And at this point, I stop caring about trying to get a clean kill, so we're going with the nuclear option immediately. Oh, sorry, not this one. This one's still banned. Here we go.
Remember back like 2 minutes ago when I said I gave those grandmas galaxy gas? I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but that was a lie. It was poison. All of those grandmas are dead. And also Millibit. Poison is a status effect that can be applied in a couple different ways, through spells like Dark Fog, Throwables, and by attacking an enemy with a weapon that has poison damage. All sources do a different amount of this so-called poison damage, which builds up on the target and procs when the target reaches 100, which then deals 1095 real damage. Now, here's the important part. If a button press only deals poison damage, but doesn't proc the poison effect, it does not count as an attack button press, as it's not doing real damage. The only button press that actually counts is the one that triggers the poison, meaning if I cover a weapon in poison resin like this and swing, attacking and triggering the poison with the same swing, swing, that counts as a single hit for 2 points. Now you might think that this specific situation was a little unclear because the poison cloud was still there, and I agree, which is why I never did it again for the entirety of the rest of the run.
However, this was in fact legal. As long as it reasonably looked like the poison was triggered by the weapon, it counts as a one-shot, which means that my absolute refusal to ask questions is going to have disastrous consequences on the next month and a half of my life.
But we'll get there in due time. For now, the combination of the dual Demon's Great Hammers and the Mastodon Spin-to-Win machine are enough to clear out a bunch of the early game. So let's go through and get a few more bosses out of the way. Starting in Heights Tower, first up to bat is the Guardian Dragon, who seems unfamiliar with the concept of baseball, so we give him the ball POV. Next up is the Cathedral Blue, where Grandpa's been spending his retirement after fighting in the Dragon War. Unluckily for him, though, it's about time for us to come in and activate his PTSD by dragging our balls on his face. And also our sword through his chest. That was weird, I'm sorry.
Next, we head over to the Pursuer, who beats our ass and lives. However, by utilizing bug-eating capabilities, we're able to bash our way into a one-hit.
And now that we've practiced this poison method for one-shots a few times, we're able to make our way down to Mr. Hands and give him the doubled-up Unum Claw experience, leading to the first 2-shot of the run.
So all this slaughter leaves us in a pretty good spot. We're up 3 rings, 3 drugs, and 1 path to explore. Of the 3 rings, this one is likely the most important, and is the reason why our vitality got left at 15. This ring gives you up to a 50 increase on your weapon's base attack rating, which is a very big number, but only if you're at 60 or below.
Equip load.
For every bit that you go above that, you get docked points. So my very purposeful decision to go to 61
Equip load
means that we're losing 4 AR, which is fine probably. We also get the Ring of Blades, which is a free 20 AR, and this ring, which is a handy tool for later. Speaking of rings, RTSR. I've been running it this entire time. I forgot to mention it. Oopsie, sorry. This one multiplies AR by 20% when below 30% health, which is tied for the highest percentage-based multiplier in the game. As for what it's tied with, I guess it's time to finally address the bright bugs in the room. These are drugs. These drugs, when consumed, give us a 20% bonus to all damage types. However, unlike the healthy, sustainable food source that bugs are in the real world, these bugs are in very limited supply. For each of the 4 big men and the other big man that you kill, you get a restock of up to 3 bright bugs at the Hag store, meaning you can only buy a max of 18, including your first stock. So this is a resource that has to be used wisely, or there will be severe punishments. This attempt to preserve resources led me to edging health bars for another 40 minutes until I got bored, which means that now
It's time to go to prison.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it seems my crimes have finally caught up to me. The Big Bird has locked me up for my several terabytes of images of big, hot, sexy, big, huge men. Well, either that or the money laundering. Or the serial killing. Either way, we're stuck here for a while. Luckily, there's plenty to do. We can go to the Beyblade Arena or take a trip over to the Whack Gargoyle game. Also, separate rule I forgot to mention earlier. The gargoyles technically took me 5 hits, as you might have noticed, but there's a special rule for multi-target bosses where you get up to 2 swings per entity rather than per health bar, so I'm not breaking any rules at the current moment. Getting the high score on the gargoyle head bashing minigame nets is a single bright bug as well, as long as we're able to get through the kennels worth of pit bulls guarding it. More important than the infinite outpour of enemies that we get from the clown car rooms and the clown car bosses, though, we finally get in contact with McDuff. This guy is the game's other blacksmith, who has the capability to give your weapons infusions, which let them deal different types of damage. This is important because in DS2, infusions are broken. These non-physical types of damage don't have to deal with whatever the physical resistance number is, and they get a percentage-based bonus when enhanced with their matching spell. So whenever we aren't capable of using poison, or when we're using 2 weapons, this gives us a massive damage increase. Unfortunately, however, it's not going to help us with the next target, which is annoying because we're going to need all the help we can get. So the thing about Dark Fog is that in order for it to do something, the target has to stay still, which has been pretty fine so far, but then what do you do when every time that you press a button, the target teleports behind you when wave dashes into non-existence? Lose your mind is the correct answer, by the way. Mathematically, the Lost Center should be pretty easy. The Bug Whisper Trident combo with poison is more than enough. The problem is that math doesn't actually mean anything in the real world. In order to execute, we have to be in RTSR range, which basically makes us a one-shot, get her to stay in the cloud while also not getting hit, while also not running out of time on the Trident, which is probably like 10 seconds, by the way, while also hitting her with both swings on the sweet spot, there's a sweet spot, by the way, and also hitting her during counter damage. What's counter damage? It's a multiplier you get when you hit an enemy while they're in an attack animation. So altogether, that basically means that we're going to need an act of God to get this kill.
Oh, what the scallop?
Well, past Jonathan, I'll tell you what the scallop. Jesus has a name, and it is head hitbox. Yep, you heard that right. Lost Center has a hitbox in her head that makes you deal 1.5 times damage. You might be thinking that this is really important information. It's not. Almost nothing else has one. This will not be useful for the rest of the run. So thanks for that, I guess, FromSoft. So now, 2 of the 4 big men down and 3 more bright bugs purchased, we finally stop edging and bust on the Flexile Sentry sexual style, and basically lock ourselves between a rock and a hard place. So naturally, I guess the only choice is to pick the one that gives me the hard place. Boner. Okay, so I'm not gonna lie, I've got myself into a little bit of a situation here. I'm gonna need you guys to be very, very quiet. I don't think she's noticed me yet. So Najka, as you might have guessed from the whole, scorpion thing, is completely resistant to poison, which is bad because that's been my thing so far. I'm like the poison guy. This means that we're gonna have to switch stuff up. In fact, I got up here so I could try hitting her in the head. Took like 2 days and a lot of brain damage. Did not work. So now we're pivoting. Enter the old Leo ring. That whole counter damage concept that I mentioned during the Lost Sinner fight, it's actually a lot more important than I might have let on. These multipliers can get pretty high. For instance, with this weapon right here, the Grand Lance, shoutouts to Meaty Jesus for the weapon suggestion, that multiplier is 1.6 times damage. And with the old Leo ring, which multiplies thrust counter damage by 1.125 times, this becomes a total of a 1.8 times multiplier. And if you think back on the other multipliers we've been getting, this is a lot. So with 2 of them and a couple good counter hits, we can take her down pretty easily in 2 shots. From there, we do some Jonestown RP where I played the part of the Kool-Aid Man and proceed to gather the best tool in the game. Gambling. These are the engraved gauntlets. We get them for stabbing Pate in the face. They give us a 1 in 20 chance to do 50% extra damage, and hopefully we're not going to need them anytime soon because one can only imagine how much time they're going to add to attempts. For now, we're skipping the spider, which means that instead, we're going to be taking on the hardest challenge in the game so far. I wish this was a joke. So, good news, bad news. Good news is that Lance's 1 triggering poison, 1 magic buffed, with counter damage and trident is enough damage to get the 1 hit. No gauntlets necessary. The bad news is that the Pokemon Tier 3 has developed an 85% poison resistance from living in rot for so long. I get that number probably means nothing to you, so let me put it this way. If you remember earlier, I said that you need to build up 100 poison damage in order for it to trigger. Our Lance currently does less than 5. So with poison decaying at a rate of around 2.5 damage per second, using Dark Fog alone simply is not going to work here. There's not enough time to switch weapons, apply poison resin, and swing before the poison buildup goes below 95, no matter what. So we have 2 options. The first one is the butterfly set. Any piece of it makes you tick nearby enemies for roughly 2 poison damage, but the ticks are hard to track. And given that the margin of error here is 2 ticks, trying to keep up with how much Dark Fog did and how much decay has happened is just not viable in this situation. So, the other solution. Bucket. These things can be popped by the Reddit mod's Chungus Slap attack or by the Spell Force. They each deal 15 poison damage to him, but more importantly, they also slime you like Nickelodeon Kids' Choice Awards, which on top of making you find feet extremely funny, it also makes poison not decay and very slowly tick upwards. So we can use that pause and decay to give ourselves time to set up, despite how inconsistent the vase breaking may be. So here's the full strat. We walk in the room, pull out the bow, and use it to loose the Goyslop in the ceiling. This distracts the Blubberous Demon long enough for us to set up the first time, using a Whisper into 3 Dark Fogs, delaying the 3rd Dark Fog until the end of the 2nd cast to get the max amount of poison damage. From there, we dance. While dancing, go into our inventory, swap the bow for a chime, swap left-handed lance, cast great magic weapon, swap right-handed chime, have Chunky do his flap attack, force the flask, swap right-handed lance, use poison resin, wait for him to attack 1 more time, and swing. And after only 6 hours of attempts, we've found the best way to kill the covetous demon in 1 hit. Get it off, dude. Who keeps turning these on? Unfortunately for us, it's out of the Goon Cave and into the Stream Den, as things are not about to get any easier. So after the misery of dealing with poison on the covetous demon, we're blessed in this fight to have poison removed as a possibility completely. However, I'm cursed with something much, much worse. The knowledge that a one-shot is possible. A couple days before I walked up to this fight, Meaty announced in the Discord that he had managed to find a 1-hit method for Mytha. And I knew that meant if I wanted a fighting chance at winning, I needed to find one too. But at 3,570 HP, none of the weapons I had used so far were getting close. Those were numbers we were barely getting to with poison. The highest we had gotten so far was against Najka, and that was only because she had a weakness to piercing damage that gave us a 1.3 times multiplier. And even then, that was only 3k damage. I spent a week at this doorstep, going through every single weapon in the game, different methods, different setups, always getting close to the 1 hit, but needing 2 crits with the gauntlet, which I just wasn't willing to play for.
If only there was a set of weapons, a pair of swords with warp blades perhaps, that could do just a bit more damage. If only.
still not enough. But it is enough damage for one crit to kill, which means that after our sponsor of the video, Steak, messes with the odds a little bit, it only takes us 38 attempts to hit our 1 in 10 chance. So this setup uses 2 Warp Swords and Flame Weapon, 2 of which are locked behind New Game Plus bosses. However, according to the rules, as long as we're still able to get a 2-hit on them, using Bonfire C-Days to get more drops from bosses is allowed, which means that after a bit of Torment, a deleted recording, and 2 more kills on the Lost Sinner, we were finally able to collect everything we need. I personally have no clue why the Warp Swords do as much damage as they do. I do know that 4 hits is a lot of hits, and 130 is a pretty high counter damage modifier, but at the end of the day, this is just a discovery I made through trial and error. Not only that, but it was the first discovery I made on my own. No videos telling me it's the best damage source, no advice from others. This was the first one that was all me. They feel kind of special because of that. Like, these are my little babies, and they made me feel like I was going to be able to take things a lot further than I had originally expected. So, let's see how far they carry me. So for the second test of the Warp Swords, we take them to get a new hammer, so we can put them in the backpack for the next set of bosses. Now with the Poison Hammer in hand and a better understanding of how weapon buffs work, we can go back to Drangleic Castle and confirm the 1 hit on the Dragon Slayers. And then we have to make the highest stakes decision we've made so far. Killing the Looking Glass Knight. Now, the method on both of these kills was nothing special. Just hit these guys with the hammers in the works. But what is special is the implementations that this is going to have on the rest of our run. Murdering the Looking Glass Knight severs our Divine Light, which immediately cuts us off from 6 extra very necessary Bright Bugs. But I did it because I think there's a chance of one-shotting the last 2 lords. And the first chance comes right now with the Archdrake Mace. This thing might have less damage than our comparable weapon, the Demon Hammers, but it has a spin attack that does not just 2, but 3 hits. Meaning that because having one weapon allows us to optimize our elemental damage, the better buffs combined with the incredible motion values just might make it possible to... no, never mind. This thing sucks. Probably should have tested that before trying it in a real run. Oops, we just kill this guy with hammers again, I guess. So now that we're a flesh automaton that can only buy 3 more bright bugs, what do? Well, if you remember earlier, I said that Past the Bell Gargoyles is a bright bug. And now that the Lost Sinner is dead, we're able to Ascetic the Belfry Luna Bonfire, which respawns the bright bug, but also respawns the gargoyles, which means that they have to die again if we want another. Now, technically, according to the exact wording of the rules, we don't have to 2-shot the boss again, as the rule technically only says that you have to 2-shot bosses if you want to specifically farm their drops. But I, unfortunately, am a Spirit of the Lost Cell and afraid of getting in trouble. So we'll be 2-shotting them every time that we need more bright bugs. I actually ran out of bright bugs before even getting to the Looking Glass Knight, so our bright bug count is now officially set back to 3. So with that sorted, we then solve the MILF killing puzzle. I'm not explaining it. Here's a bunch of text. Pause and read it if you want. Hit the Galaxy Pegasus on the frog a couple times for a point. Drop a funny little stick in the crypt. And why am I hearing that bell? This is Velstadt, right hand of the king and master of smashing that goddamn bell. At 6290 HP, he's actually the 2nd highest HP boss we've met, meaning that we should just be able to replicate the strategy we used on Looking Glass Knight. But the world of Dark Souls does not work on shoulds. This spell here, which happens when he reaches 50% health and successfully disengages, raises all of Velstadt's elemental resistances and surely does something to that physical resistance number because he pretty much stops taking damage. So our strat is going to be to not let him do this. For that, we're going to be using a new weapon and a new mechanic, Toxic. It works the same way as poison, can be applied alongside poison, and does 400 more damage than poison. However, there's only one weapon in the game that can actually apply toxic and poison at the same time, and that's Mytha's Bent Blade. So we'll be using that in combination with the lance for our first hit. Then for the second hit, we'll be skipping poison and going in with the warp swords, buffing as quick as possible and going in before he has a chance to disengage and buff. So after equipping all that and our new nifty stick, which lets us cast all our spells from the same wand, we're out of inventory slots, and we still don't have a way to build up toxic, which means that we're gonna have to go poop mode. These deal roughly 40 toxic damage and the bent blade does 12, so we need to throw 2 and then wait for as close to 20 seconds as possible before throwing the third, which I kept track of in the most accurate way I know.
19, 18, 17.
Don't worry, I learned what a timer is eventually. That's all it is in concept. Just poison and toxic on the first hit, then buff and swing before he's able to pray, which we'll surely do first try. One try and 6.5 hours later, we walk down to pick up the king ring, then take it up to Aldia's Keep, where I finally realize I still haven't killed Dark Lurker yet. Luckily now is the perfect time to remember, as we get the best damaging sorcery in the game, Soul Geyser, and also, in return for this funny little feather that I just found on the ground randomly, get access to Unleash Magic, which is basically just a free version of Bright Bugs that you can only use for spellcasting. These are both important for Dark Lurker because he only takes half damage from physical sources. So instead, we just shoot him once with Soul Geyser, then wait for him to split, and aim for the collateral to get the kill, which means that we now have our final solve of the game. Climax. It's the highest damage spell in the game by a lot. Combined with the blue dagger, the Black Witch Domino Mask, and our crit gauntlets, we're basically able to sperm our way through the rest of the game. So let's get this done. First, the Guardian Dragon, who takes a quick blast to the head after not getting crit for like an hour straight. Then we head up the Dragon Airy. Yeah, this one's not happening. But we do perform a little bit of child abduction, which after a bit of farming gives us a stone that makes us do 15% extra damage for 6 seconds. And also gives us cool armor. We go on to dump a load on the last giant, and finish on the giant rat that makes all the rules. And after a 2-time on the throne duo, and a couple shotted spins on Chandra, we are officially done with the game. I take a step back again, talk to Meaty for a bit, and try to get an idea of where we stand. And I get the feeling that I'm about to lose, like I'm down by a lot. I wasn't planning on stopping beforehand, but now I know I have to do something big. First though, it's cleanup time. NPCs are all worth points, so unfortunately they all gotta go. Toxic, climax, tragic accidents, there isn't any real difficulty. Except we clean up all the mimics, get rid of the giant ant, trade in Nashandra's soul for a hex chime, and Ascetic Dringlight Castle for the Ring of Blades +2. And now we're officially set. It's time to enter the DLC. Now we're gonna start with a warm-up round. We just killed a bunch of NPCs, so what's 3 more? We get backshots on Lucatiel, then play a poison guessing game with Havel and other guy till we manage 2 correct guesses in a row, which is annoying, but unfortunately the only option we have to kill him. The reason we do this first though is because we also get 2 more bright bugs, which we're gonna need for this next fight. The fight I've been thinking about since the beginning of the run. Ava the King's Pet is the most pivotal fight of this entire challenge. Behind her is 8 extra points that would be a huge advantage to anyone that can get through her. At 8930 HP, only 160 ahead of Nashandra, she is theoretically doable. However, her weakness to fire and flame weapons' absolute mediocrity means that we have to use resonant weapons, so our damage isn't going to be quite as good as it was beforehand. But that's not the real issue. The real issue is the poison resist. Every boss so far has required some sort of setup of Dark Fog cast to get the right poison buildup. For most enemies, it was a 1-cast deal. Of the 2 where it wasn't, the only one that I haven't covered is Nashandra, who just required a bit of buffing between 2 casts to get the timing right. However, at 79%, Ava's poison resist is very inconvenient. 2 full Dark Fogs bring her to 78 poison buildup. Our spins only do 14, and we need as much time as possible between cast and swing, so we'd need to hit 2, then wait for exactly 24 seconds to get her down to 60, then cast a third to get her up to 98.
Problem is that getting 3 guaranteed full casts is nearly impossible, because Ava seems to have a 95% chance to hallucinate, see me as Pickle Jonathan, and react according to her natural instincts.
And as soon as she absorbs a partial cast, you move from the known to the unknown. Was that 3 ticks? Did the hitbox in her tail cause her to take an extra one? Is she at 22 poison or 29? And on every cast you ask these questions, watching the number in your head grow more and more abstract, essentially taking gambles on what poison she's at. And all the while there's just this helpless feeling of never knowing for sure. Thinking she's at 50, then you cast Dark Fog and all of a sudden she's poisoned. Going in for the swing when you're sure it's close, and then just nothing. And all this is just for the chance of getting the first swing. From there, you have maximum 16 seconds to use Poison Resin, Dragon Shout, and pray for an opportunity to get the counter hit. And all of this needs to be done twice in a row. Needless to say, this fight started getting in my head. Up until this point, there was not a single fight where the execution took longer than a day. But as a day turned to a week, and a week turned to 2, the end of the competition began to get close. The dread of the deadline really started to get to me, and I just lost any confidence I had. I started giving up on runs that hadn't even started at times, as I'd just lose track of numbers and get overwhelmed. It started to really feel like getting both of these hits just wasn't possible. But what I really like about competitions like this is this understanding that you have whenever you run into an impossible wall. This understanding that everyone is running into the exact same wall and throwing everything they have at it to try to get through. And that inevitably, one of them is going to end up doing it. And if one of them is going to end up doing it, you can be damn sure that I'm going to do it too. So at this point, with 8 days remaining, there's no longer time to mess around. We go through, claim 4 points for the mimics, a 5th point for the other cats, and pick up my final gambit, Azel's staff. This staff multiplies the damage of spells while holding it by 15%. Now, if you were paying attention, you might have noticed that I haven't killed 3 bosses. And that's because if this works in the way that I think it does, it might be able to buff Climax too, which would make the damage high enough for a crit to kill. But it doesn't. It even says so on the wiki, which I probably should have tested way earlier. So with no strat on one and shaky strats on the other 2, there's just no time to grind these out. We just have to take the 2 shots and move on. Because there's one last target that I need to get before time runs out. There's very few strategic differences between the Alva and Ivory King fight. Both are incredibly difficult, high mobility targets, both have the same poison resistance, and both require poison and counter damage on both swings to get the kill. But there's 2 major advantages in this fight. First is that we don't have to wear the dragon armor, which means that instead we can use the butterfly set to maintain poison after a couple full casts. The second is that at the 45-second mark, the Ivory King backs up to buff his weapon, which repeats after another minute. This buffing counts as an attack animation for counter damage and gives me exactly enough time to unequip my butterfly set to ensure the weapon is poisoning, then swing. Of course, these advantages come with their own problems. I had to switch to mouse and keyboard for the first time ever in order to properly switch off the armor, and the 5-minute wait time at the beginning of every attempt made the pressure feel higher than ever. This time though, I felt much more ready. No matter how many of my own corpses I had to throw at him, I was willing to put in whatever it would take to earn my ivory crown.
I can fly.
And after one last spin on Alsana, with 170 points and 18 hours left on the clock, this is where our story ends. At least for now. There's a little more left to be told, but I think it's best to just leave it for the eventual official backlogs video. If you want to see some kills that don't entirely rely on poison or get better explanations as to what's going on in game, please check out the other creators that participated in this challenge. And thank you so much to Lemon for inviting me to this. It's been a fun 2 months of torture, followed by a year of entirely different torture. So, goodbye for now. I'll be back a lot sooner next time, hopefully, maybe. And as always, thanks for watching.